What if the success that you're chasing isn't the success that your soul actually wants? Today's guest, Leo Mars, built multiple businesses, checked every box, but it wasn't until a spontaneous enlightenment experience that everything changed. We're talking breathwork, spiritual awakenings, and how to build a life that's not just profitable, but deeply aligned. Get ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about manifestation, success, and purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, the show where we tackle the taboo topics of money and manifestation. I'm your host, Jenni Schultz, former 9-to-5 grinder who ditched the status quo and went all in on creating a life I love. Yes, I use manifestation. Yes, I took action. And yes, I created a 7-figure net worth before turning 40. Every week, I'll bring you inspiring stories with money mavens and manifestation masters. From learning how to make more, save more, and grow your wealth to unlocking the power of manifesting your dream life. I am so excited to play in this space with you. Let's jump into creating a life you love. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, Leo Mars.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
I am pumped to chat with you today because I really want to, the listeners are going to get to know who you and your story is. Why don't we just start at this point and the listeners will know right away why I've got you on the show. Please share your story and what you're all about.
Sure. Well, it is a long story, and I know your listeners probably don't have the time today for that, but I was born and raised in Alaska. From a very young age, I was entrepreneurial. I didn't even really know what that was. At 12 years old, I started my first business, had a marketing campaign, hired my best friend, had more work than the two of us could handle. And that really continued on throughout high school. I was working part-time and then had businesses part-time and going to school full-time. My senior year was the first day of class, my senior year, and it's almost like serendipity. I had chosen this kind of elective class, small business and entrepreneurship. And I'm sitting there in the first class of the first day of my last year of high school. And the first thing they did was the teacher put a projection on the wall of the description or definition of an entrepreneur. And I'm reading this and my jaw just drops. I go, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur. That is so cool. So I started consuming all sorts of business books and, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when that was really kind of on the rise. And really that's been a centerpiece and a backbone of my life. I've done a lot of different things. And I was lucky enough to kind of like have a certain confidence with money early. Like in my teen and high school, I actually dropped out of high school halfway through my senior year. When I asked my guidance counselor, who'd known me since an infant, point blank in a class meeting, I said, how much money do you make? And he told me. And I told him how much money I made last year, and it was more than him. And he's like, my dad's age, right? And I was like, I appreciate you encouraging me to go to business school. I'm out. So I dropped out of high school and continued on. I did a number of different things. A lot of my steady income early in life was from construction with my father. So my father had always been somebody else's kind of slave building their company in commercial construction. And I encouraged him at around 20. I said, hey, man, you're worth 3 times more than what you're getting paid. If we can do something together here, I'll take care of all the admin stuff and you'll just be in the field. So we did that. And that gave me a lot of kind of growth potential and early success with money that led into kind of maturing in a kind of a materialistic entrepreneurial sense early on. And I'm so grateful for that. When I was 20, I want to say 23, I funded a startup in Denver, Colorado. It was immediately successful. It was still kind of old school business. It was a commercial, basically a printing company and digitization company, and invested in a couple of Albanian immigrants. And they hired their whole family and they're very scrappy and we just kicked ass. And then about 18 months later, the primary kind of owner of that business and I were leaving a nightclub. We were just kind of like, man, we're young, we're on top of the world, we got all this money, nobody else does. And we thought we should have a place of our own. 18 months later or so, we ended up opening a venue. I was kind of the primary force and majority owner in it, also the designer and builder. That was kind of successful from day one. It was beautiful. It won awards, best ofs, and top of the town. It had pretty much the biggest celebrities who'd come through Denver would come through my venue. And so it kind of like really matured through this like materialism phase really quick. And then at 27 years old, I was 2 years into running that venue, and I was visiting my father in Alaska, not far from you in Southeast Alaska, just taking a week away. And I slipped into an altered state in the shower, totally unexpected. I had no idea what it was. Basically, like a non dual, like basically a state of enlightenment, a short moment, a glimpse of full on enlightenment. So it wasn't out of body. I was permeating my perception beyond the walls of the house, beyond the stratosphere of the earth. My sense of identity was just as vast as my perception. And one of the only qualities that that state had, other than that kind of expansive, vast, oh, just kind of genie out of the bottle type of feeling, was this sense I had this knowing, and there were no thoughts going on, but I had this like just felt knowing that I could exhale a universe into existence just effortlessly. Omnipotence.
Huh.
It's been 15 years since that, and it's driven everything I do. So
Wow.
it was a real reckoning. I went back to Denver. I got a phone call from some restaurateurs out of New York. Just kind of felt very random. Said, hey, we want to buy your venue. We visit it when we come through town. And that initiated basically a sellout to my kind of minority partners, sent me on a quest, a spiritual quest, and have really spent since that moment realigning with what is truly soulful and passionate, like on a deep level of service and contribution to the world.
I love this so much because you came from a materialistic kind of ego place, right? You were just building for bigger and better, and you had the money and more than some of your peers, it sounds like, and didn't really know what to do with it. For me and manifestation, sure, you can try to grind it out and manifest from a place of ego, a place where you want more, but it's kind of hollow. I think true manifestation comes from a sense of what your soul wants, what you're aligned with. So I want to hear more of your story now that you've busted away from the ego part of your life.
The story really is quite a winding tale. I ended up getting I got very interested in kind of the origins of, you could say, the manifest world or the nature of reality. I started studying integral theory, which is the work of an American philosopher. Started studying it through an institute in Canada. And how do I apply this to like consciously interact with the unfolding of the universe, which is really kind of manifestation, right?
Mhm.
I don't often see it through that lens because what happens for me is sometimes when I get caught, like I went to that place too soon and then manifested kind of what felt like a wrong reality. So I was like, oh, after that experience in the shower, I was like, what did I do? I'm making millions of dollars, intoxicating people, and in some sense, kind of ruining their lives. Even though that's what young kids do, they go out and get wasted and party. So I went through quite a few periods of depression and really ended up getting pulled into the kind of inner circle of this American philosopher whose life's work is known as integral theory, and went really deep into that for many years. I developed my own, what I kind of consider a design philosophy and praxis, which is based on first principles and kind of this meta theory. But what I really have leaned into is essentially like the connection between creativity, an emerging universal spirituality, and what brings all that together on a practical level is a combination of creativity and peeling the false layers of the self. And I used breath. I opened the first breath studio in the US back in 2018, but peeling away the layers of the self to get to what you were just reflecting on, that like truly authentic self. So that's really everything I'm up to. My head is all up in that space.
Fascinating. I went to my first breathwork session. It was a couple months ago now. So my eyes have been open to the world of breathwork. And I would love for you to share with the listeners who are probably hearing about this word come up now. Can you explain what breathwork is from a listening sense
Yeah,
so somebody can understand
yeah,
that?
yeah. You know, I am not a huge fan of the name, the word breathwork, because once you have, and that could be your first time or your fifth time, once you have what I would call a big experience with your breath, it's not work anymore. It's like, I want to go back there. That felt amazing. I like to call it active breathing. And so active breathing is just an intentional manipulation of the breath to a certain, hopefully benevolent or beneficial end. Yeah. And
Interesting.
there's a lot of styles that fit into that category.
Yeah. And for what I found with breath work, and this could have just been the one session that I took, and it was a couple hours that we were there. It did
Mm.
feel like work at first. The intention behind what you're doing and causing yourself to do. And I've only done it the one time. I actually wound up completely crying during the session, releasing something. I still to this day don't know what. I've felt better since. And I want to do it again. But I'm like, am I going to cry again or am I going to have a different experience again? I don't know, right? It wound up different than what I expected it to be. I thought breathwork would be a relaxing type thing, I think.
It's a bit of a wild card, to be
Mhm.
honest. Was there content underneath the crying, or did it feel purely emotional, energetic?
It it felt like releasing. And it was the studio that we were at, we were kind of hanging in these silk slings too as we were doing the breathwork exercises. So I was really able to move as I was doing it. So it felt like
Nice.
some kind of release of something. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's often the case. Typically, it's usually an interpretation, like after the fact, that you'll begin to see glimmers of, you could say, like the content of the emotion, but it's usually comes through because it's a purely mechanical practice. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what you think, where you're at in life, how old you are, breathing rhythmically for a period of time, I would say longer than 3 minutes, will create effects on the nervous system. So you can think of it like, modern life is really stressful. We're constantly looking at our watches. We're constantly getting inundated with information. We've got all sorts of bills to pay and different things that are pulling on us, responsibilities, children, all the things. And you drive across town and you're getting cut off in traffic or flipped off or whatever, and it's stressful. And so what that does is the breath has a direct correlation to that experience. It's almost like has an immediate response, and that's tied with our psyche as well, and essentially a whole network of neuroendocrine cascades throughout the body mind. And so when we breathe rhythmically, we're basically evening that out and ironing the wrinkles of the erratic, stressful mindset.
That's fascinating. So what kind of results do you see people have from going through breathwork processes?
Well, you spoke to one of them. That's not uncommon. Releasing grief or processing, I would say, is probably more accurate. Processing grief, processing rage, but also I see breath practice as having kind of two sides of the street. One is agony, the other is ecstasy. So you'll have a lot of facilitators who are more inclined towards processing trauma and emotional self-regulation and things like that. All breaths do those things. And then you'll have breathwork teachers, which are my favorite, and which I'm more in the ilk of, that are like ex rave DJs and like they're now older and they still like to get that buzz and feel amazing, but they don't like to pay for it. I'm kind of on that side of the street. And one of the reasons why breath practices has resonated so much for me and why it just landed the moment it hit was that it unlocks creativity. You can even go into a breathing session not knowing what my block is. I just feel kind of stuck. And you could come out of it with life-changing revelations that just pop to the surface. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh my God, I'm unstuck.
Yeah. I love that because I truly think that creativity is the spark. It's our compass that helps us navigate this world. And so often you even run into people who are like, oh, I'm not creative. Period. End of sentence. And I don't think you're allowing yourself to be creative. I think you're just going to school, getting the job, doing the things that society is teaching you to do. You're not
Yes.
listening to that creative spark that you have in you because I think we
Yes.
all have creativity in us. We all have that spark. And if we were all able to listen to that, I think the world would be this beautiful place of everybody doing things that felt aligned. It's just the essence of who we are.
Yes. Yes. And it's an unconditioning process. I used to be way more on the like, I've always been disciplined and worked overtime and dreamed big and all these things. And I used to push this idea that we always need to be improving, improving, improving. And then I came to this point actually during COVID where I was like, yeah, okay, like I have some successes and I'm a respectable human being. I've done some good things in my life. But I'm like, why? why am I just fundamentally, in a sense, like not approving of myself? Like I always got to be better.
Mhm.
And I realized that through the propagation of that, I would say like idealistic, you could say like worldview or philosophy, personal philosophy of like evolve constantly. I realized that was fortifying an unconscious belief that I'm not enough, which was causing me to reject the moment, which is where all of our golden shadow, beautiful qualities, the peace that passes all understanding, the qualities of our personality and of our consciousness that are magnetic.
Mhm.
They're right here in the moment.
Right.
It's that unconditioning process, as you reflected, is the way.
Yeah, so true. And I know, and I want to like segue here into the book that you are in the process of releasing, because I want to hear your thoughts and your perspectives on the way you're seeing the world, because clearly it is different than you were looking at it decades ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really kind of on the basis of we all know we've been in the attention economy for well over a decade, 15, probably 20 years. We've been in the attention economy. We're shifting from, as this deluge of content now with AI slop amplifying everyone's grasping for attention, for ad revenue, or just feeling good about themselves, there's a shift happening where we're moving from the attention economy to the new meaning economy. So we're actually moving, you can think about it, it's very rational. We're moving from getting eyeballs to giving value. Essentially, we're all creators in life, right? But the new creator is one who is connected, as you were saying, I think before we started recording, connected to that root core soul level self and is coming from a place of, I like to reference Ikigai quite a bit, almost as like a North Star, right? Coming from a place where they have done the deep inner work, the self reflection and the contemplation and the self work to know where their strengths are, what they're passionate about. And then once you kind of get on that, you can go, really, what does the world need? Which is always a moving target.
Hmm.
Going, I want to serve right there in that space. So it's someone who's done the deep inner work, who operates from intention, who values resonance over reach, who sees their work as a sacred act, their contribution to the world as a sacred act, but also within this larger scope of service to humanity. When we shifted into the scientific revolution, and it's a long time ago now, but we, in a sense, we threw the baby out with the bathwater when we threw out meaning and narrative and context. What are we doing it for? So we can sit in our giant living room and drink champagne? That gets boring. There's deeper call for us in our lives. And so this book is really about, so it's called The New Creator, working title, Rise of the Mindful Artist in the New Meaning Economy. And it's to illuminate that meaning, and you could say after modernism, which was accidentally rejected mythology, which is context, matters of ultimate concern, which you could say is spirituality. Postmodernism did a little bit of a job bringing it back with radical pluralism. There's a sense of like, this is where New Age thought was born and unity thinking, but there's still a lack of a backbone there. Like one of my teachers calls it flatlandism. It's like if everyone's right, no one's right, there's no way. And I think that Rumi was very correct when he said there's 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground, 1,000 ways to go home again. But we've got to also have something to hold on to. We need a point, a purpose, a sense of place. And so I believe, and in some of the developmental models that I've studied, spiral dynamics, for example, that technology is essentially accelerating and amplifying us into this next tier of stages of development in which we're going to see the return of meaning in a very big way.
Hmm. That's kind of fun to think about, because
Yeah.
there's so much fluff, and you see the people on Instagram who you know are just forcing that face and that persona of who they are, and it feels hollow, right? So to go back to actually have meaning and purpose, and who cares if you're having to show the world what you're doing every day, if you're literally at home with your kids being the best parent you can be. You're doing those little things that are feel wholesome and feel meaning and purposeful without having to I don't know, have this persona of what we're expecting society expects us to have and not truly doing what we should be doing. So that book is in the works right now, right?
Yeah, well, it's probably been in the works for about 13 years, 14 years, but I didn't have enough life experience to write it the first go around. Under a different name, I'd started writing this book in 2009. But yeah, so that's in the works. It's not published, it's forthcoming. Looks like this fall if I self-publish, probably next spring if I go the traditional publishing route. And yeah, pretty much all of my work is centered really around empowering that. I like to use the phrase the hero of a thousand faces.
And speaking of empowering here, you had mentioned about doing the inner work. Do you have any advice for people that you've found or that you see resonates with people? You do breath work. I know you do that avenue of just some takeaway that somebody can go do right now to help them start doing some inner work on themselves to get more true to their authentic selves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, my first recommendation would be develop a breathing practice because it's the fastest, most reliable way to clear the static and get to the signal. And anxiety, stress, depression, it will literally alleviate all of these conditions. And so I think it's important that we come from a place of true embodied presence. And also, as we can all see, going into this accelerated, amplified era of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, all these other things, we're no longer the smartest computational entities on the planet. LLMs have surpassed us, like so most of us, at least the IQs. So we're moving into an era where what I would call PQ or like presence quotient, these soft human skills are going to become basically like just like that's going to separate you because not only does that allow you to kind of process life more tactfully and gracefully and powerfully in your power, but it also allows you to process more information and make decisions from a felt somatic sense with wisdom and from a place of trusting the 13.8 billion years, at least, that made us.
Right.
I know I'm in this space, but that's why I'm in this space, because for me, breathing is the gateway to the now, and the now is where all that we dream of being exists, our empowered self. So, I mean, that's one thing. There's a couple of things that come to mind. We can get kind of frazzled out, right? Life is some little thing happens, or you get a notification, whatever, and it can kind of spin you out. First of all, returning to the moment, I am hoping to send people to my breathing app. I've got a 7-day free trial they can try out there. And so they can actually kind of dig into what I'm getting at. But there's also like breath awareness you can use, and it's been talked about for centuries. You can use your breath to return to the moment. And once you're in the moment, you can then listen to your body and move towards whatever feels like yes. And if you move towards what yes feels like, you'll stack wins, basically. You'll make decisions. It won't always be easy. It might mean walking away from a conversation, or it might bring up oh gosh, I got to leave that relationship. When you tune in the moment, in the body, you want to follow your yes from there. So use your breath without manipulating it. Use it to come back to the moment. Eckhart Tolle said in A New Earth, and I'll paraphrase, he said, you cannot think and take a conscious breath at the same time. Conscious breathing stops your mind.
Ooh.
And he goes, you dig into like Eckhart Tolle on breathing, it's like, whoa, he's been talking about this for 20 years, a lot. So that would be the first thing, is go down the rabbit hole of that and actually don't think that it's some woo-woo thing. It's so practical. The breath is only ever happening in the body in this moment. And that's the only place it ever lives. And then the other thing, which is I feel like it could be useful to your listeners, I like to call it the meta question. Let's just say that there's an area of life you're feeling stuck. You identify that area, go, oh, I'm feeling stuck. Let's just say broadly, I'm feeling stuck. The meta question works for all circumstances. So the meta question is this. You ask yourself, what question, if I asked, would give me an answer that would allow me to move forward in X area of my life? And it's a trick question because the question is, what's the question? And for every question, by the nature of the laws of the universe, there is an answer. It's polarity, right? And then when that question arrives, you ask that question and then you follow the lead. So that can get you out of any rut.
Yeah, I like that. A very practical, useful piece of advice. Why not learn to use the tools that we've got to facilitate our
Yes.
life right now?
So fundamental. We do all the serums and the supplements and the
Mhm.
protocols, and it's like, oh, but my breath is stressing out my whole body. It's a first cause. The breath governs the nervous system, and they say it's the only function of our autonomic nervous system that we both consciously and unconsciously control.
Fascinating. That is a perfect strong note to end it on here. So I would love for you to share with the listeners where they can find out more about you, where they can get their hands on this app and all that fun
Yes.
stuff.
Yes. Oh man. So you can go to my main website, leomars with two R's, MARRS.com. If you're interested in like any of those topics about the new creator, basically, if you sign up to my free email there, I'm sharing snippets and insights and experiments from the book before it's released. You can sign up there. And then if you want to check out the breathing app, it's called Ether. That's ETHR. And the URL is ethr.one. There's a free 7-day trial that you can sign up there. And that's essentially accessible on all devices.
Okay. Awesome. I will make sure to link all those in the show notes for easy clicking for people. And thank
Thank you,
you
Jen.
so much for joining me on the show today and having this conversation.
Such a pleasure. We could go so much deeper.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Manifestation and Money podcast. If today's conversation lit a spark in you and you're craving a space to go deeper with your vision, to actually live what you are manifesting, I want to invite you into something really special. It's called the Manifestation Playground, a high vibe monthly membership where you get to experiment with manifestation techniques, connect in intimate pods of like-minded people, and receive direct mentorship from me twice a month inside our cozy Zoom room. This is where your dream life stops living in your journal and starts showing up in your reality. Vision, energy, accountability, it's all happening inside the Manifestation Playground, and your group might be forming right now. Just head to www.manifestationplayground.ca or click on the link in the show notes to learn more and save your seat. And remember, your vision isn't random. It is your future waiting for you to believe in it. I'll see you next time or inside the playground.